The FIA GT Championship is now exclusively for GT2 cars, which makes this the championship favourite. The overwhelming Dodge Viper won 9 out of 10 races last year, and the Oreca team returns to defend manufacturers' and drivers' titles with Olivier Beretta and Carl Wendlinger. The championship starts here in Monza before going to Silverstone and then Hockenheim before the calendar gets busy. Hungary, Belgium, Germany and the UK are next, followed by a long trip to Homestead in Florida, with Austria coming ahead of the season closer, which will probably be at South Africa's fabulous Kyalami circuit in November. Of Monza is dominated by the massive front straight, and so it should be. But though it is a power circuit, Monza is also hard on tyres and brakes, and here's why. Prima Variante is where most of the outbraking action will happen, but getting the braking points right all the way round is a vital part of racing at Monza. Then we go into Curva Grande, not a fast corner going in, but power on all the way through. And this is one of several places where rear-drive cars with lots of horsepower may lose out to well-sorted Porsches with good traction. Almost at once you're braking for the second chicane, Variante della Roggia, and then the track's running away towards the 2 Lesmo corners. Both slowish right-handers, but you need to be good all the way through both of them. And you need to be especially good here on the exit of Lesmo 2 as Monza starts to open out. And you run down under the bridge towards the 3rd chicane. More heavy braking as you come into the Variante Ascari. Carbon discs are banned, so the big iron brakes have to haul the cars down from top speed. They will be averaging close to 200 kilometres an hour. Now you must be on the power early, because this long back straight eats up all your power. The Viper drivers will be working hard on the exit of these turns, trying for the best mix of throttle without wheel spin, and they'll all be thinking about this final corner. Parabolica is a long sweeping 180 right which opens on the exit, positively inviting the over-enthusiastic right foot, and the gravel trap is waiting. But spinning tyres are almost as dangerous as a spinning car, and using up precious rubber can send a car into the pits just once too often. Weighing in at exactly the new 1100 kilo minimum, the Rock Porsche is the form book's #1 challenger to the slightly heavier Vipers. 99 rules permit 14-inch wheels all round, wider than last year, but otherwise things are pretty much the same, with fuel capacity limited to 100 litres and engines limited by restrictors sized to a formula that includes capacity, number of valves, turbos and overall vehicle weight. Qualifying at Monza was busy with 26 cars on track, and the big question mark was over which manufacturer would carry the challenge to the Vipers. Top Porsche, as expected, was the #3 car of Stefan Ortelli, leaping up the grid during the second session, but still with a wish list of things that would help to beat the Vipers.
To have more time and less long straight line to be able to fight against them for qualify. I think it should be not such a big problem and such a huge gap during the race, so it seems to be quite an interesting race.
And so too might the Marcos, especially after Coroiza put it 7th on the grid, fractionally ahead of the Porsche and fractionally behind the #33 Viper of GLPK Racing. Faster still was the Chamberlain Viper of Nee Amarin, Will Hoy and Hans Hugenholtz, the top end of the qualifying timesheet, now heavily populated by the big Yanks. But there was a joker in the pack in the shape of the Jaguar-powered Lister Storm. Julian Bailey making fourth on the grid and finding that the big V12 gave him enough power to stay with the Vipers on the straight, which in turn gave the team reason to think that David might yet beat Goliath in a straight fight. Olivier Beretta pulls the number 1 Viper into the pole spot on the left-hand side of the front row, taking up a position he holds by 1 second from the rest of the field lined up behind him, but by only a fraction from his teammate alongside. Jean-Philippe Belloc will start the number 2 Viper, having qualified it ahead of his shared driver, American David Donoghue. And it's doubtful if there'll be a challenge from him going into turn 1, unless Beretta has a problem off the line. With the aid of Sticky Dunlops, Emmanuel Clerico had a reasonable stab at pole position in the second session, but ended up a creditable third on the grid. Julian Bailey will be trying to convert some fast qualifying times into a good position for the handover at the end of the hour, and the Marcos crew are working on the grid with just minutes to go before the start of the warm-up lap. Here's the way the grid looks going into this opening round of the series. A Viper benefit very much on the cards, with the defending champions 1 and 2 on the front row, with a 1 second cushion back to the Lister and a very quick-looking Emmanuel Clerico next door for Belmondo Racing. Row 3 gets you Nee Amorim in the Chamberlain car alongside Didier Defourny in the GLPK version, and then comes Korreuser in the Marcos and the number 3 Porsche of Stefan Ortelli, first Porsche on the grid. Row 5, it's the Belmondo car of Paul Belmondo and the Porsche of Wolfgang Kaufmann and Michel Ligonnet. Roland Brunzerrider flags them off on the warm-up lap that will become a rolling start. The start of the opening round of the 1999 FIA GT Championship is just a couple of minutes away. Join us at Monza for the opening round of the FIA GT Championship as the pace car pulls aside and the warm-up lap becomes the rolling start. It's a green flag from the race director and the opening round of the series is go. 26 cars piling down the front straight at Monza, heading towards the Prima Variante. The Vipers side by side. Number 1 gets it. Number 2 plays the gentleman, lets him through. 22 is third. 25, the Lister Storm in fourth place. And that was Stefan Ortelli in the number 3 Porsche, who has jumped 3 or 4 places off the grid. He was 8th on the starting grid, 5th now as they go round the Curva Grande. On board with Bob Wallach in the number 6 Conrad Porsche, coming up to Variante della Roggia, the second chicane. Well down the field as he jumps the curbs, the Vipers are already going through. Lesmo 1, jostling for position in the pack. Second of the Rook Porsches, that's number 4, Hubert Haupt. There is the leader, number 1, Olivier Beretta. Behind him in second place, number 2, Jean-Philippe Belloc. Behind him, number 22, Emmanuel Clerico. Julian Bailey in the lifter, 25. 3 is Stefan Ortelli. 18 is Nee Amorim in the Chamberlain car. And behind that, 33, the GLPK Viper of Didier Defourny. Viper, 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 and then in fourth place Lister. This is what the qualifying timesheets told us the order should be, and there it is. Stefan Ortelli in the number 3 Porsche. Behind him, one of the Chamberlain cars, and there is Wolfgang Kaufmann in the Freisinger Porsche. On board now with Emmanuel Clerico onto the front straight at the end of the first lap, and look at the gap in front of him. That is the class of difference that the Orica Vipers have pulled out in a single lap. Hard on the brakes now, taking a lot of curb going through the chicane, and Clerico fighting that Viper. You can see that every time he touches the throttle, the thing has a life of its own. And that is probably the biggest difference between his car and the 2 in front. They do seem to be riding a lot smoother and handling the power output of that big 8-litre V10 engine. V12 power from Jaguar for the Lister Storm, and the Porsche behind just a little bit more nimble than the big cars up front, but losing out on these long power sapping straights here at Monza. First, second, third, fourth is the Lister, first of the non-Vipers. Porsche in fifth place, and a Chamberlain Viper next. That is Nii Amorim, looking very good indeed. Wolfgang Kaufmann behind that. Very experienced racer, instructor at the Nürburgring, and knows his way around the inside of the Porsche. He seems to know his way around Monza fairly well. He had a fairly ambitious opening lap, and like Stefan Ortelli, they have made up for qualifying, it would seem, on race day. They all said this would happen. It would be a different story on Sunday afternoon, and so it has proved. And Stefan Ortelli sticking rigidly to that line, not giving Nii Amorim anywhere to go. The Portuguese driver looking for an opportunity, but that Porsche was planted fair and square in the middle of the racetrack, and he didn't have a chance. Takes a little bit of dust there. He knows he's under pressure. His mirrors are full of ugly black Viper, and he knows that it is only a question of time. Ortelli working hard just to maintain his position, and sadly that sort of thing tends to slow you. Concentrate more on what's happening behind, less on your braking points, your turn in and all the rest of it. And the Chamberlain car still bouncing as it comes out of the chicane. Well, they are big chicanes here at Monza. Not even the Formula One cars like them very much. And this absorbing battle going on behind the leaders. Very interesting for us, but it's allowing Beretta and Belloc to escape, and that's exactly what they're doing. Still the same order. Fourth place there, number 25, the Lister. Fifth is Ortelli in the number 3 Porsche. And behind that, still looking for a way round, is Nii Amorim in the number 18 Chamberlain Viper. Tyres up to race temperature, drivers up to race temperature. Pulses a little bit more settled now after the excitement of the opening lap. But look at this formation work from the two Vipers. Nose to tail, and just gradually easing away from the rest. Through the first chicane and off on another lap, and that is the number 27 car. That's Tamburini into the pits. Tyre change after a puncture. There's the evidence. Monza is hard on tyres, but shouldn't be that hard on them. As this battle continues with Wolfgang Kaufmann, now an interested spectator, quite close behind. And if Nii Amorim isn't very careful, he'll find himself unexpectedly looking at the back end of a completely different Porsche, because Kaufmann will nip past. This is Olivier Beretta at work, Sunday afternoon drive, whistling down the front straight at Monza as fast as you like, and casually looking around him. It's all very easy and very relaxed. You can see, watching Beretta there, that the Viper is a very easy and comfortable race car to drive. Despite that overabundance of horsepower, and it has got more horsepower than a Stampede of Derby winners. Despite all that, it seems very comfortable for the drivers. This isn't comfortable at all for Stefan Ortelli. Here comes Nii Amorim. It was only a question of time, and there he goes. So Amorim takes the Chamberlain Viper up another place. So it's Viper first, second and third, Lister fourth, Viper fifth, and then Porsche, and Porsche behind that. Julian Bailey still looking good in the Lister and still maintaining his pace. It'd be interesting to see now whether or not Nii Amorim can reel him in. Still still looking a little bit unsettled on the curves. And there's debris on the track there at Grande, and that's the reason why. That was the number 16, the Freisinger Porsche, off onto the dirt. I think because it had a puncture, it looked a little bit front low, but that could have been the result of the spin rather than the cause of it. No problems up front here, though. Olivier Beretta as comfortable as you please, and starting to close on the back markers. Just a glimpse of a yellow Porsche up the road in front of them. That will be the number 20 car. And these two relentlessly lapping round Monza and still pulling away from Emmanuel Clerico. That must be very dispiriting for the Frenchman. A very spirited driver, Clerico, and knowing that you cannot do anything at all about the departure of the cars ahead of you must be immensely frustrating. He's doing grand work behind them, hanging on. He will not let go. Every so often he has another little spurt, and then you see he's a little bit closer than he was. And that as soon as you relax, as soon as you come down off 100%, and there's an oil flag showing at Curva Grande, that must mean slippery surface. That must just mean gravel rather than oil, I think. The number 16 Porsche was off there, chucked out some pebbles. It's also a warning about that carbon fibre on the track. And the two leaders coming up now on that number 20 car of Attila Barter, the yellow Porsche. And the rest of the pack following. As Wolfgang Kaufmann has a look at Stefan Ortelli. He couldn't get past the Viper, but he's definitely going to have a crack at Ortelli. Still together at the front, and Barter with his indicator on, letting everybody behind know that he's going to get out of the way. We're on board now with Emmanuel Clerico through Ascari and heading down towards the Parabolica, that long sweeping right-hander, down through the gearbox and turning in now on the gas, gently, and try and stop the rear wheels spinning. Almost impossible. They spin the wheels on tick over in first gear, those things. Pulling out of the pit lane without spinning the wheels is almost impossible. Oh, and that has been very unsettled. That is Niamarin, the number 18 Chamberlain Viper, and that right front wheel has been completely unsettled. Slows, even so, going into the pit lane, obeys the speed limit. Hugh Chamberlain waiting anxiously. He's known this was coming in. He's been talking on the radio, and Amorim brings it in. And you can see by the look on Hugh Chamberlain's face that he knows this is serious. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but it's not a happy Viper, not a happy Chamberlain team. And the right front wheel is indeed hanging off. And here is the number 20 Porsche with the left rear damaged. And it's just possible that there was contact as Amorim was lapping the Porsche. And Amorim getting out of the car, that is retirement for him. Well, he walks away from it. It's all over for Niamarim, and Will Hoy, who was due to take the second hour in that car, now won't get his hands on it in the race. Have to wait until round 2 at Silverstone, and that is bitter disappointment for the team because things had been going so well up to this moment.
When I pass him, don't saw me and open the steering, and I touch with the guy. I don't know who is the guy. I know he's the yellow Porsche, slower yellow Porsche.
Slow yellow Porsche. Well, Niamarim understandably disappointed about that, but up front, no disappointment. The Vipers got through that little track quite safely. And through the first chicane goes Clerico and stamps hard on that right foot, pulling out towards the Curva Grande and accelerating all the way through it. Well, back marker time for the race leader as well, and they may know what has happened to Niamarim and be just a little bit more wary than they were. That could happen to anybody, and it could easily alter what the form book has said will be the result of this race. On board with Bob Wallach, and the Conrad Porsche vibrating hard as he takes a lot of curb there. Turns, oh, and he's lost it, and it's a puncture. Look at him fighting it. He's got a puncture off the throttle, and that is problems. He's a long way from home. Everybody else will pass him now. Wallach off the throttle is going to try and get this car home. Well, Lesmo one's about as far away from the pits as you can get at Monza. And that's the third puncture I think we've seen from natural causes. 5 if you count the Chamberlain Viper and the number 20 Porsche. And it's going to be a long, lonely lap for Bob Wallach. There it is, left-hand side. And it's off the rim already, shedding bits of rubber. He will probably get that one home, but he's lost a lot of time on the lap. They'll bring their pit stop window forward and make the most of the necessary stop, but even so, that represents disaster in terms of finish position for Franz Conrad and Bob Wallach. Painfully slow process to watch from the outside. It must be immensely frustrating inside. Bob Wallach, of course, a veteran of many years, will be used to all of this. He's tasted it all, the success and the disappointment. This is just one more Sunday afternoon that you will have to write off to experience. Almost through that tyre and onto the rim, and that's when it will start to get damaging, but he is also almost home. And you can see the tyres in 2 halves there. Any minute now, he's going to say goodbye to that one. But just coming into the pit lane now, so it's safely home for Bob Wallach. And the team know what to expect. One tyre waiting in the pit lane. Franz Conrad comes out to have a look. They're refueling it, not going to change drivers. Franz Conrad obviously wasn't ready to get in, so Bob Wallach staying in the car, but this will count as its first pit stop. That tyre completely destroyed. Viper first, number 1. Viper number 2, second. Viper 22 in third. And Lister number 25 in fourth place. Rather closer to Emmanuel Clerico than he used to be, by the looks of things. And it's just possible that Julian Bailey is continuing to lap at his planned speed and his planned fuel consumption, and is beginning to close up on Emmanuel Clerico. This is him now, and if he looks in his mirrors, you know what he'll see. Great big ugly Lister leaning on the back door, and he'll have to start thinking about that now. He's lost touch with the leaders, as you can see. Looks as good as new. Bob Wallach back out in the Conrad Porsche. And are we going to see the Lister nudge his way into third place and a possible podium finish? That's really what the team came here hoping for. They think the car is good enough. It just needs the luck and the reliability. That's always the problem with the teams that haven't got big budgets. And Lister, the tiny specialist car manufacturer, goes racing with a budget invisible to almost everyone except the bank manager. Looking very, very good in this company, it has to be said. As always, the Lister has proved in the past that that V12 Jaguar engine has got the power. And if they can make it last as a race car to the end of 500 kilometres, then they will definitely be in with a shout. It's lap 24 of the opening round of the FIA GT Championship in Monza, and Cole Oyser is heading for the pits, trailing smoke as the Marcos becomes yet another victim of the carbon fibre fragments up at the second chicane. That left rear tyre is coming off the rim. Oyser coming into the pits. And a shame for him and the team. Couldn't get the new car ready in time for this race. That's an old Marcos. He says the oldest one. He's got probably 96, that one. As we look at Porsche number 3. Oh, and Ortelli under pressure now. Runs over the curves at the Prima Variante, and you can quite see why. Look at that. He's got a whole crowd of people banging there. Number 8 is the Hallertha Porsche of Michel Neugarten, and 33, of course, is Didier Defourny in the GLPK Viper. Full change for the Marcos. Nothing like a Formula 1 pit stop when you get to GT racing. Only a limited number of people allowed to touch the car. In a Formula 1 stop, there are something like 19 or 20 people around the car, and that's done a little bit of damage. Look, that flailing rubber has knocked off a cooling duct for the rear brakes. All 4 tyres changed. You can see why you don't want to spend a long time in the pits with extra punctures, because there's no such thing as a rapid pit stop in GT racing. You have a puncture, you lose a lot of time. Forget about the time going round the lap with a flat rear tyre. It's in the pits, you will lose another minute at least. Leaderboard tells you everything you need to know. We are 26, 27 laps into the race. It's Viper number 1 in the lead and heading into the pits for its first scheduled stop, handing over the race lead to number 2, Jean-Philippe Belloc. This is Olivier Beretta down the pit lane, regulated speed. The team are waiting. Wendlinger is ready to climb in. So the drivers change. Carl Wendlinger gets into the lead Viper. The fuel goes in after they finish refueling. Then they will change the tyres. Race leader number 2, second place, number 22, Emmanuel Clerico. The Lister pulling into the pits as well. So that little battle for third place slightly diffused as Julian Bailey goes into the pits. And out of the pits goes Carl Wendlinger. New race leader going into the pits as well. 1 lap later, follows his teammate in. It's all happening like clockwork round at Orica. David Donoghue waiting to get in. Belloc out. Plenty of time. The fuel fed by gravity can't be pumped in, so the car will be at rest for a long time. It cannot be touched by anybody else while it is refueling. They must wait until the fuel is on board before they change the wheels, or change the wheels and then refuel. This is the new race leader, but that, as determined by pit stops, Emmanuel Clerico has not yet been in, and when he does, you'd imagine that things up front will go back to the way they were. And out goes David Donoghue out onto the racetrack. And there is his teammate in the distance. So the number 2 car comes out in front of number 1. And you can see that Wendlinger was stuck in an awful lot of traffic there, but they have changed places during the pit stops. 2 in front of 1. And when Clerico stops, number 2 will become the race leader. And the Lister came into the pits on lap 28, right behind the number 2 Viper, and it's still there on lap 29. They can't start it. They've got a battery problem. It's a tragedy for the Lister team. You can see it all written on Lawrence Pierce's face. Oh, disaster when it was all going so well. It's still going well for the Vipers, though. 2 and 1 in that order. Donoghue leading Wendlinger, but the race order at the moment is 22. The Belmondo Viper of Emmanuel Clerico, who has yet to stop. Number 15, the Freisinger Porsche of Wolfgang Kauf. Beckman also yet to stop in second place. The number 2 Viper is third. The number 8 Porsche, the Hamilton car of Michel Neugarten, he hasn't stopped either. He's in fourth place. Fifth is the Chamberlain Viper, the one remaining Chamberlain Viper of Christian Van. He hasn't stopped either. The GLPK car is next. That has yet to stop. And just after its pit stop in 7th place is the number 1 Oreca Viper of Carl Wendlinger. Something's bitten Emmanuel Clerico, cruising round very slowly indeed. And he must be out of petrol. He stayed out an awful long time. The other Vipers have been coming in. Clerico stayed out, enjoying being in the lead perhaps, and now he's not enjoying anything at all. That car is freewheeling home, or is it under just a little bit of power, going reasonably quickly? It's freewheeling, the engine's dead, it's out of petrol. This could be the end of the race for Emmanuel Clerico, unless that car can roll all the way up the pit lane to the pit box. It's just going to stop tantalisingly close, but not close enough. Clerico just easing to a halt. There is nothing he can do. Well, that has changed everything. Drops him out of third place. Whatever happens from now on, David Donahue is ahead of Carl Wendlinger. And Clerico's pushed it. Emmanuel Clerico has pushed the Viper up across the white line that marks the beginning of the pit lane where the mechanics can take over. And they have taken over. It's taking 2 of them. It weighs at least 1,100 kilos. And Emmanuel Clerico has pushed it up the pit lane by himself. You can see the strain on him. You can see the effort that it has taken for Emmanuel Clerico to bring that car into the pit lane. And that was disaster happening before your eyes for Clerico. He's managed to pull it back from the brink, but it's still a bit of a tragedy for him and for the team when everything was going so well. Absolutely exhausted in the pit lane after the mechanics pushed that car up to the box, and now out it goes with Christophe Pilon driving.
I was more than exhausting. I almost died 15 minutes ago, but I'm very, very disappointed because we had the wrong calculation and the customization, and I had the wrong information in the car. I had enough fuel to go 1 lap more, and I had the first bump when I passed here, so it was too late. And normally I had enough fuel to make 1 lap, so I don't know what happened.
Something's happened to Franz Conrad as well. Well, that's the second time for the number 6 car. Left rear wheel, it's got a puncture. And the Lister is back in the pits, and there is quite clearly an electrical problem with the car. Lawrence Pierce, that face says everything, so expressive. You know the thoughts that are running through his mind. And there's the number 3 Rock Porsche out on track. Stefan Ortelli handing over to Claudio Hirchen. And the car still not looking as decisive. Oh, no, into the box it goes. It's all over for the Lister. A combination of problems, but what a tragedy after it had been going so well during qualifying and in the race.
I was thinking the car was running like clockwork on the track, and I was thinking that we could finish on the podium today. The gearbox, everything's perfect, brakes, still a bit of a problem, but nothing that would slow us down or stop us from getting on the podium, and then of course it wouldn't start. So
well, the Vipers out on track, Donahue and Wendlinger. All the other cars have been in for their pit stops. These two are the race leaders now. In fact, David Donahue is the race leader. Wendlinger in the number 1 car is officially second. And it makes you start to wonder whether or not there are any team orders to cover a situation like this one. In any case, normal service resumed up front as the Viper parade continues. Number 1 now heading his teammate, and behind that is the surprise. We were expecting Belmondo's and Chamberlain's perhaps, and instead there's a bit of a dispute between a Porsche and the GLPK car. Third place could become a bit of a battle. 33 Viper of Vincent Voss battles with the number 15 Porsche, now driven by Michel Ligonnès, as they squabble over 4th place, and the race heads towards the second and final round of pit stops, coming up towards lap 55. Ligonnès tucked in right behind the Viper, looking like a man who's going to do something about that position, and there he goes, braking into Parabolica. He turns inside the big Viper, and the Porsche accelerates away out onto the front straight. Nice piece of work from a very tidy driver. Well, Ligonnès now up to 4th. Vincent Voss down into 5th place. Somewhere up ahead is the Rook Porsche of Stefan Ortelli and Claudio Hürtgen. And in front of that, the 2 Vipers that are leading the race. And that is the number 24 Porsche of Horst Felbermayr into the gravel at the Variante della Roggia, the second chicane. Here are your race leaders. Vipers number 1 and 2, a lap ahead of everybody else, as we're just short of 2 hours into a race that will stop at 500 kilometres. That's 86 laps of the Monza circuit, and therefore will not quite go to 3 hours. And the number 22 Belmondo Viper isn't going anywhere else. A little bit of a shove there by the number 16 Porsche. That's Raymond Linton, and that was again the second chicane, and that looks as if it is the end of the line for number 22. 21 there, the sole survivor for Belmondo, as the Marcos prepares for its second round of pit stops at the end of 2 hours, and it's holding up very nicely, thank you, although it does seem to be slowing, coming towards us, may well be on the end of its fuel consumption. Mike Hazeman looking over his shoulder as he heads in towards the pit stop, and it looks as if it's been forced upon him, rather like this, which was forced upon Christophe Pion. Well, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but the result inevitable, and it's gravel track time for the Belmondo Viper. Pulled out and on its way back to the pits, minus driver, retired from the race, and its final pit stop for the lead car, the number 1 Viper, coming in, slowing down at the pit lane entrance. Olivier Beretta waiting in pit lane to take over for the final stint, which will be around about 40 minutes. Out comes Carl Wendlinger. Done his job perfectly. This has run like clockwork for the Orica team, this operation. Pit stop running according to plan. No hurry, as you can see. The limiting factor is the rate at which that fuel goes into the tank. There's no point in rushing. Here's the number 2 car on track. David Donoghue, the leader once again, but for how much longer? He'll be coming in for his pit stop, and then the positions will surely be reversed, unless they can do what they did in the previous round and swap them over. They got that number 2 car out rather smartly. Out goes the number 1 Viper onto the track. There it is, out of the pit lane, heading down towards the first chicane. Olivier Beretta settling himself in. New tyres, new fuel load, and there is Jean-Philippe Bellot waiting for the number 2 car to come in. David Donoghue handing it over. Door open and the American gets out, the Frenchman gets in. Smoke pouring from the front wheels. Monza works the brakes in these big cars, and you can see just how hard it works the brakes. Here's the number 1 car, assuming the lead again, providing that it comes round and passes the pit lane exit before this one comes out. Look at all the brake dust coming out of there when the wheels are changed. It's still smoking. That's not steam, it is smoking. The brakes are almost on fire, and the engine is fired up. It's on its way, but the number 1 car is also on its way. Not soon enough, though. They've done it again. Turned the number 2 car round very quickly. Got it out in front of its teammate. But on goes the indicator. Belloc moves over. And through into the lead goes Olivier Beretta. All lined up for a formation finish.
We had to save fuel a little bit. At the end of the stint, quite a bit. The gearbox was not very smooth anymore. But, okay, there was nobody behind us to set us under pressure. So for that reason was no problem.
No problems at all. Beretta up front, starting the final lap with a Porsche in 3rd place. No longer the number 3 car of Ortelli, but number 15 of Wolfgang Kaufmann. And there's a change here as the Chamberlain Viper goes up into 4th ahead of the number 33 car. And there is the formation finish and the checkered flag for the Team Orica Vipers going over the line. An absolute textbook performance from the Orica team as its cars come home in formation at the front of the field. But just because it was expected to happen, don't overlook the fact that they have just won a 500-kilometre race at one of the toughest racetracks in the world. Here's the official result with the 2 Orica cars just a couple of tenths apart at the finish line and the only 2 cars on the same lap. 3rd place is a minute behind at the flag, and the Chamberlain crew will be delighted to see Christian Van and Christian Glasl in 4th place, winning that battle with the GLPK car. And then Belmondo, 5 Vipers in the top 6, with the Orica crews celebrating most of all, understandably. Drivers' points follow the race result at this opening round, with each driver in each car sharing the same score. So we have ties for all the positions in the table. That might change during the rest of the season if drivers don't continually share the same car. But these look like pretty solid partnerships in the making for the podium finishes. And there's a good chance that you can expect all 3 of these pairings to stay together throughout the season. They certainly look happy enough. The winners will be handicapped at the next round, and the new weight penalty system introduced this year will put 25 kilos on 1st place, 20 on 2nd, 15 on 3rd, 10 on 4th and 5 on 5th. And that can go on until a car carries a maximum of 100 kilos, which will really put the pressure on the teams and the drivers. Orica understandably head the team's championship, as this points table reflects the result in the same way as the drivers' table. And the 1-2 finish puts them well on the way towards a repeat of last year's success story. And for them, at least, that's what it's all about. And they made it look easy once again, cruising home to a formation finish, going over the line. A perfect result for Team Orica.
I mean, you know, no, it was a very nice race because we worked very hard during the winter. We arrived at the first race and we are ready. We have a very good car, and now since 4 years we know the car very well. And I mean, all the team did a very good job. Both cars are on the podium, so that means it's very good for Chrysler and Orica, because the main target is to win the championships for the team. And okay, of course, I'm happy because the first car is in front, but I mean, today is a victory for all the team.
Orica 1st and 2nd, but the factory team prepared all the Vipers in this race, so you can see they have every reason to be pleased with themselves after what amounts to a clean sweep of the final results. It's a feeling that's shared by all the drivers.
Oh, I think it was a perfect success for Team Orica. The Vipers ran very well as could possibly be imagined. And I think it shows the preparation that Team Orica has done and their experience with the cars. But, you know, as my dad used to say, the parking meter strikes 0 at midnight, so it's start all over for Silverstone, because I'm sure all the other teams will do a lot of catching up.
Some of them will have to, because a weight penalty is the burden of success. Even so, 3rd place must seem like winning the lottery to Wolfgang Kaufmann and Michel Ligonet in the Freisinger Porsche, ahead of no less than 3 of the supposedly all-conquering Vipers.
I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun also in the first turn after the start. It makes really a lot of fun to drive that car. And we are also happy to be the quickest Porsche and the best Porsche in that field here, so it's a great job.
Round 2 of the championship is in 5 weeks' time at Silverstone in the heart of England. Another power circuit with plenty of long, fast straights that are sure to suit the Vipers once again, even with an extra 25 kilos of ballast on board the number 1 car and 20 on number 2.